कर्तत्वं कारकापेक्षं कर्तत्वं स्वभावतः कर्ता मुक्तेति विज्ञानं मृषेवेति सुनिश्चितम्. Agency depends on doership, instruments, etc., but non-agency is natural. It has, therefore, been very well ascertained that the knowledge that one is a doer and experiencer is certainly false.
Yes. So the term here is karta. Comes from the same root kri, to make or to do. So it is a function in the Vijnanamaya kosha that coordinates the activities of the equipment through memory. So I got out of bed this morning, I took a shower, I answered the door to get the books from Puneet, I made coffee. The function of Vijnanamaya kosha that coordinates all that is called karta, the doer, the sense of agency. It is not evil. It's not bad. It's just not you. And in fact, there are people for whom this karta is broken. For example, a schizophrenic who hears voices. You and I normally have an internal dialogue. Where am I going to go for lunch today? You know, you think that thought. It comes out in words inside your mind. For a schizophrenic, it seems to be outside. You need to go. Da, 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 da. So they hear voices. The karta is broken. Also, there are people who have multiple personalities. It is broken, for example, when you're in an alcoholic blackout. If you drink too much and you black out, your equipment acts in the world. But when you come out of the blackout, you have no memory of it. So again, this karta is not evil. It's not bad. It's just not you. What makes it function? Guna and karma, qualities of mind and the force of the past as it interacts with the society, the larger karmic environment. But I am not an agent. So there are three positions of the karta that we can take. Two are conducive to liberation. One is conducive to bondage. I do nothing. I'm ever the unattached witness of it all. That's what Shankara is driving at here. I am ever the witness of the upadis, the equipment acting in the world. The second one is also conducive to liberation. I do everything, meaning identify as the universal doer. There's a very famous Zen koan, from where you are sitting, move the distant boat across the water. There is Ishvara, who does everything. This is how Jesus would frame it when he said, I of myself do no thing, it is the Father within that doeth the work. I do nothing, I do everything. Either one of those practices is conducive to liberation. The third, I, Jim, do this action, I do not do that action. That is when I'm identified with this karta function in the vijnana maya kosha, in the subtle intellect. That one's conducive to bondage. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Evam manabhyam swarupe bhagate sati niyojyo hamiti yesha satya buddhi katham bhaved. How can the idea that I am a person to be enjoined by the Vedas to perform actions be true when the real nature of the self is thus known from the scriptures and inference?
So the facts are the Vedas appear inconsistent and contradictory. Frankly, all scripture does. How do we reconcile that with the Vedas if the Vedas are Shruti? They are heard, the divine wisdom of God. Because the rishis in their wisdom provide a practice for us wherever we are in our spiritual unfoldment. So, if we are firmly identified with the body, meaning this karta function in the subtle intellect attributes to the self the qualities of the not self. I get up in the morning, I make breakfast, I do this, that, and the other thing. I think that is me. Then the scriptures provide various rituals to purify that subtle intellect, equipment in general. The scriptures teach that I have a subtle body which moves from incarnation to incarnation, impelled by the force of the past, and will take on a new body according to its karmic disposition. But that subtle body is also not self. Even though there's that teaching in the Vedas. That identification with the subtle body is a useful, temporary understanding. I compare it to Newtonian physics. We all learn Newtonian physics when we're in high school. Is Newtonian physics a true description of the universe? Well, actually, not really. If you study quantum physics or on the large scale astrophysics, Newtonian physics is incomplete. So also, for example, in Gita, when Krishna talks about the transmigrating soul drops off a body and takes up a new one, like we discard clothes, it is useful at a particular stage of our development, our unfoldment. But the final teaching of the scriptures, I go nowhere. I do not incarnate. I am outside of the dream of cause and effect. The clearest way to understand it is again to go to the dream state. In the dream state, my mind creates a dream body with a dream karta, ego identified with it. A dream world outside and a dream world of thoughts and feelings inside. Now, upon awakening, we can ask the question, do I incarnate into a dream? Am I in the dream, or is the dream in me? And is the dream really in me? If I dream about a horse, I don't wake up in the morning with the horse in bed with me. So the way Swamiji would talk about it, reincarnation is the genealogy of the ghost in the post. As long as you're seeing the ghost in the post, the Sanskrit is purushasthana, the person in the post. I imagine it. That I can imagine its genealogy, its background, where it came from, how it suffers. But once I see, oh, there's nothing there, I made it up. So also, self is not born, the self does not change, the self does not die. Don't believe me. In a mind very quiet, the attentive faculty turned back on itself. Notice the knower. See if you can find a person in there. When you go looking for it, that karta falls. That ahankara falls. That jiva bhavana falls. What do I find instead? Chidakasha, the space, pure awareness. Next verse.
Yatha sarvantaram vyoma vyomno vyamphantaro hyayam nirvikaro chala shuddho ajaro mukta sadadvyaha. Just as the ether is in the interior of all, so am I in the interior of even the ether. Therefore, I am without any change, without any motion, pure, devoid of old age, ever free, and without a second.
I don't like the use of this word ether. Does he say Akash? Or Gagana?
Neither of those.
What does he use for ether? Anyway, the idea was in the West especially, the idea was that space itself was filled with some substance. Maybe that's true. Maybe there's like dark matter or dark energy we cannot perceive. But here the point is, consciousness is like space. So space is in another dimension from the matter which occurs in it. Here is the coffee mug, room space, cup space. When I move the cup, oops, space has got to catch up. No. What was the cup space is here. Did it merge with the room space? It didn't do anything. There's not really, as we say, space in the cup. The cup is in space. And whatever happens to the cup, it doesn't affect, change, alter space. So it feels like I am inside my body. That's largely because my senses, except for the sense of touch, are all in my head. Hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling. So it feels like I'm inside peeping up. But again, I have the same experience in the dream. So, is the self in you, or is the body, mind, intellect in the self? Sometimes I will say, look behind your eyes. Notice the knower. We get the feeling of the self being behind, back of. Oddity, be careful. Don't turn your head or you're going to smash the wall with the self. No, no. Your self is in another dimension. It is outside of this world, but it pervades this world. But never touched by the stuff of this world. Now listen carefully. The self is not an it. It's a who. Meaning you are an entity that's alive, it's conscious, sentient. You have Baba being. You are the one entity. Next verse.
Chapter 13. Achakshushva prakaranam. Eyelessness. Achakshushvana.
Let me stop you just a minute. Eyelessness here, chakshu means E-Y-E, not capital I. Going, start again.
Achakshushvana drishtirme tatha shutrasya ka shutihi avat avatvana tu bhaktiha syadamanastvana mati kutaha. There is no vision in me, as I am without the organ of seeing. How can there be hearing in me who have no auditive organ? Devoid of the organ of speech, I have no act of speaking in me. How can there be thinking in me who have no mind?
So here, the 5 outer senses, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. Which one did I miss? Seeing.
Seeing.
And including the mind. Mind is a sense organ. But the self is the illuminator of all that. None of these senses are in me. And in fact, they are dependent on the mind functioning. And we prove it every night in deep sleep. Did you sleep soundly last night? Yes. What did you experience in deep sleep? I have no idea. I was sound asleep. What did you know? I remember in the morning that I must have known nothing because I can't remember a thing. No seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, or thinking or feeling. But you are still there, illuminating the darkness. The mind folded up in deep sleep. So I like the term the Buddhists use of dependent origination. The individual knower of the world and the perceived world arise at the same time. They, in fact, are just two sides of the same thing, like the two sides of a coin. And they are both fundamentally created by the mind. The self is beyond. But when those two arise, then the self is experienced as the witness of objects seen, here, tasted, touched, smelt, the witness of feelings, the witness of thoughts, the witness of memory. Fold the mind up and all that is gone. I go. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Verse 2 and 3. Apranasya na karmasti buddhaya bhave na vedita vidya vidye tato nastishchan matra jyotisho mama nityamuktasya shuddhasya bhutastha Syaya vichalinaha amritasyaksharasyeva masharirasya sarvada. Devoid of the vital force, I have no action in me, and devoid of the intellect, I am not a knower. Ever free, ever pure, changeless, immovable, immortal, imperishable, and bodiless, I have no knowledge or ignorance in me, who am of the nature of the light, pure consciousness only.
So again, language fails us, By knower and knowledge here, we mean knower of stuff, knowledge of facts. So I know where the cups are kept in my kitchen. Self is not that. Stop the mind and you stop the knowing of stuff. But I remain. Don't get too hung up on this. Well, I thought he just said the self is the witness in the waking state. Blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about it. Thin the mind, inquire into yourself. In the end, words fall short. Even Shankara's words can only point, they cannot define. Any thoughts on this? Next verse. Oh, one more thing. Some of us think that it's about figuring it out. Is it like this? Is it like that? Is it the self like the ocean, or is it like the sky? Is it like, running water? You keep trying to put it into a box. That's not how to go about it. Directly investigate. Unknow the mind. Nature of the self is transparent and clear too. Going on.
Jighatsava vipasava shokamohau charamriti na vidyante shariratva dvayom madmavatya vino mama. All pervading like the ether, I have no hunger, thirst, grief, delusion, old age, and death, as I am without a body, mind, and vital force.
Now, we have to make sure we don't misunderstand this. It doesn't mean my body's never hungry. My body never gets old. My body's not going to die. Doesn't mean that. The body will go through its dharmas. It is born, it grows up, it gets sick, it gets fat, it gets thin, it loses its energy, and dies. The mind will not leave its dharma at the surface of it. When the situation is conducive, it's pacifying. The situation is non-conducive, you don't like it. The intellect never leaves its dharma. Stuff makes sense, I know. When it doesn't make sense, that makes sense to me, I do not know. All that goes on, but none of it touches me. Now, in the end, even bondage and liberation let go of my concern about them. No, we don't give this instruction to beginners. This is an instruction we only give to those when they tune up the mind and introvert their attention. They have no doubts. The self in me is that space of consciousness. Then they get afflicted by, am I enlightened yet? Maybe, oh golly, I got so ignorant, I got triggered. Oh, I me, mine, I me, mine, I me, mine. Here's Shankara saying, or as Shankara says in Pratha Smarana Stotram, the early hours of the day, I remember, I meditate in my heart, in the essential nature I am. Next verse.
Asparshatvan me sprishti najehvan jehatvadrasagyata nitya vijnana rupasya jnana jnane name sada. Devoid of the organ of touch, I have no act of touching, and devoid of the tongue, I have no sensation of taste. I never have knowledge or ignorance, as I am the nature of eternal consciousness.
And the same idea over and over again. So, just as in the gross body, I am not touch or taste. I am not knowing or not knowing in the intellect. Now again, listen carefully. You can't renounce something you haven't got. The scriptures say, renounce the bliss of samadhi. Oh, good. I'm never going to bother to go there then. Renounce ignorance and knowledge. I don't need to realize my self-nature. I'm not going to bother to go there. I think I'll just have another martini. That's not freedom. So learn to introvert the mind, let it be absorbed in the self. Find that deep peace. Now let go of your attachment even. Quieten the mind. Look within. And in the subtle intellect, we have that pratya vijnana, that recognition. Oh, there's nobody there. Now, drop even that. Next verse.
Yatu syan manase vrittishchuka ruparangyana Nityamevatmano drishtya nityaya drishyate hi sa. It is well known that the mental modification which is produced through the instrumentality of the eye and is the form of the object of vision is always witnessed by the eternal consciousness of the self.
Yes. So when I see pleasing objects, the mind goes, oh, how lovely. I see unpleasing objects. There's a horrible car crash on the news. Ooh. Displeasing objects. But I am not touched by either. The eye perceives, the intellect discerns the suchness of it, the mind then judges and reacts. But I witnessed that whole process. And the senses do not deliver reality in any way, shape, or form. You go to see an illusionist. Up there on the stage, there's a woman and she's in a box. And he takes out a saw and he saws her in half. Blood doesn't drip out of the box. They separate the two halves of the box. They put them together again. They open them and she gets out. How did he do that? I would have sworn he just sawed her in half. How did he bring the bunny out of the hat? So my senses do not deliver anything close to reality. What is real is beyond sense perception. It doesn't mean that we have faith or we imagine it. You are direct experience. And what is our spiritual definition of real? The spiritual definition of real is that which is never subject to negation. The only thing that qualifies is that. Aham. Everything else is a mystery. When we start, we think seeing is believing, God's a mystery. In the end, it's exactly the opposite. It's this world that's the mystery. What the hell is really here? And the only thing absolutely knowable without doubt is God. Next.
Tathanyendriya yuktaya vrittayo vishayagnaja smriti raga dirupa cha kevalantar manasyapi manasyasta dadanyasya drishyante swapna vrittayaha drishtur drishtistato nitya shuddhananta cha kevala. Similarly, other mental modifications in the forms of objects of knowledge produced through the instrumentality of other organs, and also those in the forms of memory, attachment, etc., which are only within the mind, and those again in dream, are witnessed by one different from all of them, i.e., by the self. The knowledge, therefore, of the knower is eternal, pure, infinite, and without a second.
So it is the nature of the intellect in the state of ignorance to attempt to attribute reality to experience. In fact, that is pretty much what creates our realities. So in our current political environment, we have this phenomenon of politicians deliberately making up stories. And if you say it loud enough and long enough, people start to believe it. And it starts to become very, very real for people. People are doing horrible things, taking out AR-15s and shooting people because of their belief. This is real. Now, many of us, certainly of my generation, and I think some of the kids who are coming of age now, are dabbling with psychedelic drugs. And Swamiji taught it. I agree with him. Drugs cannot reveal spiritual reality to you. However, they can do one thing. When you take LSD and you experience the LSD trip, then your mind says to you, this is real. The way I used to be seeing the world, that ain't real. Of course, the trap is you now think what you saw on the LSD trip is real. So its value is it reveals to us the unreality of our concretized ordinary waking state that I think is so real. What we have to do is understand if you can see it, if you can know it, if you can cognize it, that isn't it. In the Mandukya Upanishad with the Gaudapada Karika that we studied, that second chapter titled Vaitatya, falseness. Gaudapada goes into more depth on this exegesis of the pranava, of Om. Om is divided into four quarters, Uma and silence, waking state, U dream state, Ma deep sleep state. Silence is the Turiya, the fourth, the consciousness that illumines those three states. It's not a fourth mind state. But in that second chapter, he said, well, actually, we don't have three mind states. We have two. Okay? We have deep sleep, and we have dream. We have a nighttime dream, And we have a daytime dream. And he then goes through the whole chapter, knocking down all our unexamined assumptions by which I think this waking state world that I see, well, it's real. The dream state, I know that's not real. And our definition of unreal is that which is subject to negation. If it doesn't exist in the beginning and seems to exist in the middle and then doesn't exist in the end, it has no real existence. And in the fourth Karika, he says the phenomenal world in the waking state is quite unreal, and the proof of its unreality is you can see it. If it is seeable, then examine it. Does it have a beginning and an end? Does it have qualities and characteristics? Is it changeable? Most importantly, it is an object of cognition. It is sankalpa. It is imagination. Doesn't matter whether or not your individual mind did it. We call that the dream state. You are the god of your dream. Or whether Ishvara is dreaming. Still doesn't matter. Asat. It's not real. But you are directly experienceable. In fact, it's the only real experience. Can't even call it an experience if you think experience implies an object experience. You are eyeing all the time. It is never subject to negation. Yeah. So much of my anxiety, my worry, my fear, my anger, my covetousness is all based on I need to secure me. It is really necessary. Because you are an eternal factor. Next verse.
Anityasa vishuddheti grihyate travivekataha sukhi dukhi tatha chaham drishyayopadhibhutaya. It is through the indiscrimination between the self and the modifications of the mind, false adjuncts to the self, that the knowledge of the knower is wrongly conceived by the people to be impure and transitory, and the self happy or miserable.
So back to this idea of the karta, where I attribute to the self the qualities of the not self. So when the environment, the situation is conducive, meaning familiar, based on the past, I have decided this is stuff I like. The mind has sukha. You are a sukhi. You are happy. It's contrary to that, unhappy, suffering. But I am ever the witness of those mind states. And it's so mechanical. Don't become attached, involved, or concerned. Sometimes those sensations, those mind states are pretty intense. It'll pass. Next verse.
Murhaya murha ityevam shuddhaya shuddha ityapi manyate sarvalokoyam yena sansaram richati. All men misconceive themselves to be ignorant or pure, according as they identify themselves with the mental modification, I am ignorant or I am pure. It is for this reason that they continue to be in transmigratory existence.
So, some of us are rascals, impure, unethical. Some of us may have low self-esteem. I'm a terrible person. I got angry here. I lied there. I was mean to so-and-so there. Or some of us may think I'm a goody-goody. I'm a spiritual person. I'm always serene. I have a halo. Can you see it? I run around wearing orange. I'm nice. I'm a good, generous person. This is what frequently the psychotherapists invite us to do. The term is called reframing. We come up with a new story of the circumstance. One way of looking at the story, I feel like I'm terrible. The psychotherapist says, reframe it. You're not so bad. Yada, yada, yada. You're actually really good. Well, it was really all about them. Whatever story you come up with. So the ego can say, I'm an okay person. Shankara is saying, if you're honest with yourself, it is at best momentary rest. Because the problem is not that I'm a bad person. The problem is I think I'm a person. Those of us who study that wonderful text, The Cloud of Unknowing, there's a section in it, I just love it, where the author of The Cloud says, real suffering is when we grasp not what I am, but that I am. meaning I have finally given up my concern with, am I a bad person trying to become good? Am I a sick person trying to become well? Am I a broken person trying to be healed? And I see the problem is I think I'm a person. I think that I am a person. Shankara says, freedom finally comes. Next one.
Achakshushka divshastrotam sabhahyabhyantaram tvajam nityamukta mihatmanam mumukshut sada smaret. One should always remember the self to be ever free, unborn, and comprising the interior and exterior as described in the Shruti, in which the self is spoken of as eyeless, and so on, if one is an aspirant after liberation.
So, the foolish person in deep ignorance is identified with the body. Remember the very first prose section. Why it must be a body? Because the scriptures keep saying how important it is to attain full manhood. That I should do these physical actions like puja, etc. Then as we evolve, we become identified with the subtle body. I'm this transmigrating soul. I used to be a Komodo dragon, and I'm hoping next time I'll be a unicorn. I'm still trying to go from one state of identity to another state of material existence. I mean here even subtle matter. Shankara is saying, get out. Nirupam. I am without form. Gross or subtle. Chidananda Rupam. Okay. My form is bliss consciousness. Subtle. Next verse.
Achakshushka deshastracha nendriyani sadamama aprano yamana shubhra iti chatharva nirchut nirbachaha. That organs never belong to me is known from the Shruti, eyeless, etc. There is again the saying of the Shruti belonging to the Atharva Ved that the self is devoid of the vital force, devoid of the mind, and pure.
So again, as Shankara frequently does, whenever he makes a point, he will frequently been footnoted because the first pramana, the first means of knowledge, the first authority is the scripture itself. So this whole idea that the sense organs in the body, the sense organ of the mind, the sense organ of even the intellect, the knower of thought, none of it belongs to me. In a mind made very still. How many more in this section?
Several more, a lot more.
Oh, we'll do one more.
Shabdadinam bhavascha shuyate mama kathake aprano hyamana yasmad vikari sadahyaham. As I am always devoid of the vital force and the mind, and heard of in the Kathopanishad as having no connection with sound, etc., I am always changeless.
So going back to this notion of karta, this mechanism in the Vijnana Maya Kosha, the subtle intellectual sheath, for the ordinary person, this karta not only coordinates data through memory and perception, but then it attributes to the self the qualities of the not self. I am going to the store. I am going to eat lunch. I have lots of energy. I feel sad. I am confused, or I am brilliant. I am fill in the blank. And whatever's filled into the blank is always some quality of the body, mind, intellect. And this karta attributes that to the self. That is the essence of jiva bhavana, the attitude or the feeling that I'm a person. It is the essence of ahankara. These are the I maker thoughts. This identification is rooted in avidya, ignorance. I think I'm these things because of the non-apprehension, because of the forgetting my true nature. Because the problem is ignorance. No actions will solve the problem. What's the antidote to ignorance? Knowledge. How do I acquire knowledge? Investigation. Oh, who am I? Over and over again. hang on to this mantra. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. If I think I'm a person, my mind says resolve the struggle of ego. Or better, different. I'll be happy when. Play whack-a-mole with the world. Yoga says if I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. The problem is ignorance. How do I get out of it? If you can, move into the direct experience. Aparoksha jnana. Own self-nature. Stop the mind. Notice who you are. Shorthand version that Swamiji would use. Shut up and get out. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.